We've reached the end of another year. Frankly, I am totally pleased to leave 2020 behind me. If there's ever been a year with troubles, 2020 has been it. Many people died and became ill from an unseen enemy that attacked from the hidden recesses of their lives. We had elections that we have never been matched for trouble. Conspiracy theories, court battles. We've all been affected by the loss of freedom based on the need to attempt to control the COVID-19 virus. According to the latest statistics, there were 18.7 million cases of COVID-19 and 329,000 deaths in the U.S. this year. Some of those cases right here affecting people in our church, our work, and our daily lives, yet all is not lost. Today we begin the process of resolving who we are and where we go from here in our lives for 2021. It seems built into the human nature to need a starting point for change. With the new year, we have a definite time period to look at and use as a guide for how we will proceed. Often great changes are made at this time of the year. People change jobs, many people go on diets or try to give up some bad habit or take on some new exercise. Relationships are often reconsidered in the dark days of winters. We cover up, hunker down, and light the fire if we can. It's the time for resolutions that we'll be looking at today. First, we must understand the meaning of a New Year's resolution. According to the dictionary, it is a decision to do something or to behave in a certain manner. This is the first hint we have as to why we often fail to keep our resolutions. Resolutions that are based on our strength, our logic, and our desires are prone to failure. How many times have we determined to make changes in our lives but found that we did not have the willpower or strength to carry out our plan? We didn't fail because we were seeking failure. We didn't fail because of what other people did to us. We didn't fail because we didn't have the opportunity to succeed. We weren't set up. We failed because the person in charge of carrying out the success was working in his or her own power and didn't have enough power to succeed. Or we failed because we were involved. This is from Charles Haddon Spurgeon. When sin is let in as a beggar, it remains in as a tyrant. The Arabs have a fable of a miller who one day was startled by a camel's nose thrust in the window of the room where he was sleeping. "It's very cold outside," said the camel. "I only want to get my nose in." The nose was let in, then the neck, and finally the whole body. Presently the miller began to be extremely inconvenienced at the ungainly companion he'd obtained in a room certainly not big enough for both. "If you are inconvenienced, you may leave," said the camel. "As for myself, I shall stay where I am." There are many such camels knocking at the human heart. A single worldly custom becomes the nose of the candle, and it's not long before the entire body follows. The Christian then finds his heart occupied by a vice which a little while before peeped in so meekly. It's the little things in life that most often tear us down. If you don't believe this, ask any carpenter who gets to working with glass insulation and gets it stuck in them. It's horrible. If that isn't enough evidence, consider how one tiny paper cut can irritate you in everything you do with your hand. Just a few degrees fever and I can barely think my name out of a bucket. Ever had a sandwich that self-destructed all over you? Stepped in gum? Get an unexpected bill from somewhere? These things can tear us down, and they don't even come close to what we may have faced in 2020. This year, each of us has made some decisions we are proud of and thankful for. I can say this because mere chance alone brings good enough odds that we did something right. The most important part about the decision that we have made is whether they are limited to personal value only or if they become valuable to more than just ourselves. Determining that value really matters. Looking at what we've done to help others, considering our personal value. One man said, "No man knows what he is living for until he knows what he'll die for." Therein lays the rub. What are we living for, and what are we willing to sacrifice to see that we obtain it? 1 Corinthians 9:24 through 27 in the New Century Version helps us with this. You know that in a race all the runners run, but only one gets the prize. So run to win. All those who compete in the games use self-control so they can win a crown. That crown is an earthly thing that lasts only a short time, but our crown will never be destroyed. So I do not run without a goal. I fight like a boxer who is hitting something, not just the air. I treat my body hard and make it my slave so that I myself will not be disqualified after I have preached to others. When the Apostle Paul wrote these verses, he was writing from experience as a real human being. He also said this, and it's funny, and yet it's so true. Romans 7:15 through 21. I do not understand the things I do. I do not do what I want to do, and I do the things I hate. And if I do not want to do the hated things I do, that means I agree that the law is good. But I'm not really the one who's doing these hated things. It is sin living in me that does them. Yes, I know that nothing good lives in me. I mean, nothing good lives in the part of me that is earthly and sinful. I want to do the things that are good, but I do not do them. I do not do the good things I want to do, but I do the bad things I don't want to do. So if I do things I don't want to do, then I am not the one doing them. It is sin living in me that does these things. So I have learned this rule: when I want to do good, evil is there with me. Now, Paul didn't let his weaknesses determine his ultimate value in life. He did something about them instead. Now, here we are at the beginning of a new year, and we can do something new with what we've been given. We can choose to accept our fates as they have seemingly been laid out before us. We can choose to step up from where we are and make something new of ourselves in our own power. That never seems to work out. Forget that one. We can choose to become new persons all over again by the continued filling of God's Spirit, and we can be the heir to the kingdom of God that we are and learn to live that way. There is one final story that I think is worth sharing. This story is about a man named Fred who inherited $10 million. But the will provided that he had to accept it either in Chile or Brazil. He chose Brazil. Unhappily, it turned out that in Chile, he would have received his inheritance in land on which uranium, gold, and silver had just been discovered. Once in Brazil, he had to choose between receiving his inheritance in coffee or nuts. He chose the nuts. Too bad. The bottom fell out of the nut market and coffee went up to $1.30 a pound wholesale, unroasted. Poor Fred lost everything he had to his name. He went out and sold his gold watch for the money he needed to fly home. It seems that he had enough for a ticket to either New York or Boston. He chose Boston. When the plane to New York taxied up, he noticed it was a brand new Super 747 jet with red carpets and cheap people and wine-popping hostesses. The plane for Boston then arrived. It was a 1928 Ford Tri-Motor with a sway back, and it took a full day to get off the ground. It was filled with crying children and tethered goats. Over the Andes, one of the engines fell off. Our man Fred, made his way up to the captain and said, "I'm a jinx on this plane. Let me out if you want to save your lives. Give me a parachute." The pilot agreed, but added, "On this plane, anybody who bails out must wear 2 chutes." So Fred jumped out of the plane, and as he fell dizzily through the air, he tried to make up his mind which ripcord to pull. Finally, he chose the one on the left. It was rusty, and the wire pulled loose, so he then pulled the other handle. This chute opened, but its shroud line snapped. In desperation, the poor fellow cried out, "St. Francis, save me!" A great hand from heaven reached down and seized the poor fellow by the wrist and let him dangle in midair. Then a gentle but inquisitive voice asked, "St. Francis Xavier or St. Francis of Assisi?" We all have some choices to make this year. We can decide to act in a certain manner to decide for ourselves what kind of person we shall be. Although we have great hope that healing will come and life will get back to normal, what we need is much more than normal. We need blessed. This year could be a great year in the Lord if we choose, but each of us must choose to make it in such a time of fear and trembling. What will you do with your new year?